All right, everybody. Hey, so here we are in San Diego with Afghan veteran, former intelligence officer, Mike Brewer. Mike, thanks for chatting today, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I know we're going to talk a lot about Afghanistan and you know, the situation and what got you into the evacs. But let's start with your childhood and where you grew up, how you grew up. So where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Well, actually, I had a pretty diverse childhood. I lived, by the time I hit high school, I think we had lived in about 20 states. It exposed me to a lot of different kinds of people, you know, very early in life when you're still able to absorb a lot of that, you know. So weren't many places from coast to coast in both directions that I hadn't you know, spent some time.
Let's kind of connect the dots. So eventually you founded a boxing fighting school. Is that how you kind of found your way into the military in Colorado Springs?
Yeah. So I've been into martial arts my whole life. I started very young. I was about 6 years old, and my dad got me into kung fu and boxing and anything else that would sort of burn some energy.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I took right to it. And you know, it was, I think maybe part of that moving around a lot. I was always the new kid in new places.
Yeah.
And that either went really well because people were interested in getting to know the new kid, or it turned into I got in a lot of fights. And
so you fit right into Five for Fighting.
sometimes there you go. Yeah, sometimes you fit right in and people want to get to know you. Other times you're just a guy from someplace else that doesn't belong. And martial arts kind of became, it was the thing that was with me everywhere I went. So I sold some of my stuff and got a one-way bus ticket to LA and you know, met up with and trained with some of the people that I'd looked up to since I was little. And massive growth period for me. I mean, I didn't have any other options. Back then we didn't have cell phones or, you know, social media. So I got on a bus with no plan and no job and no car and no phone, and I just kind of hoped it worked. What can I say? God looks after stupid folks. So it worked.
I can attest to that.
Yeah. It worked out for me. I landed in a very good martial arts family. Bruce Lee's protege, a guy named Dan Inosanto, was one of my instructors, and another guy, Paul Vunak, who was pretty famous among, you know, kind of the rough and tumble fighter types of the world. It was a great period for me of growth and kind of meeting people and expanding. And so when I kind of got my feet under me and felt like I was a credible person in that arena, I went first to Michigan and opened a gym at the University of Northern Michigan because the Olympic boxing team was up there, and I knew some guys, and I just wanted to train with them, and it seemed like a good excuse. And then to Colorado Springs, which was another big boxing town, and knew some folks there, and I fell in with another good group of martial artists, and we kind of got together and opened a pretty eclectic school. So I don't know if you've been to Colorado Springs, obviously.
I love Colorado Springs, the Birchmere. Yes,
yeah,
yes,
so
I've played there a few times.
That's a great spot.
It is. But this new your fighting club in Colorado, that kind of led to your military career.
It did, yeah. Colorado Springs is a huge military town. You know, there's you know, Peterson Air Force Base at the time. NORAD was there, Fort Carson was there, the Air Force Academy. All of that kind of stuff is right there. So obviously some of my student base was veterans. They were guys that were active service members. You know, 10th Special Forces Group was there. There was a big martial arts / military intersection. And I kind of had this realization one day. I'm teaching all these guys who are card-carrying heroes out there defending the country. And I'm teaching them how to headbutt and elbow people and you know, and to me that's fighting. And then they go, okay, great. And then they go off and fight wars. It's like, you know, it's just this like, wow, okay, maybe I should be doing a little more with this.
Yeah.
And so in 1999, I joined the Army. I had my roommate in college was a guy that was in a military unit, psychological operations. And that appealed to me because it was sort of a synthesis of intelligence and military. You know, they did influence operations. They tried to find people to communicate messages in a local population. It was very guerrilla.
Yeah. You know, these many years later, a lot of what you did is sensitive. Can you give us a sense of some of the operations you were on, you know, what your goals were, your experiences as an intelligence officer? Sure.
A lot of it's public now. So it's not as spooky as a lot of people would like you to think. It's actually pretty easy to talk about.
Spooky to me. Yeah.
I got, so I had taken a bunch of Middle Eastern terrorism courses and transnational terrorism courses. And so somebody thought it would be good to put me on a Guantanamo Bay problem. I didn't have a lot of experience in intelligence collection, but as a psychological operations guy, I had some what translated to human type experience, human intelligence experience. I understood the behavioral psychology piece of that and sort of some of the motivations. And so I was put on a project to look at some of the high-value detainees, their interrogations, and figure out what was real and what wasn't, and what was going to be part of a prosecution someday maybe, and what was intelligence we could use to target people, and kind of be that in-between filter. Which again is not out on the tippy end of the spear, but it taught me a lot. It gave me a master's degree in Al-Qaeda. So I learned a lot about the who's who of Al-Qaeda, and now it was kind of more time to start applying that to, okay, who can we go get right now? And so I was part of a unit that's been renamed a couple of times, but at the time it was called JITF-CT. And we provided targeting support to, pretty much everybody, all the tier 1 units that were out and about doing what they do. I ended up in a very weird position of being one of a huge number of people that was working on bin Laden and not really realizing it. It was, we were all working on a piece of this giant puzzle, and, somebody probably sees the whole picture, but it's not the guys that were at my level. But when the Osama bin Laden raid happened in Abbottabad, several of us that had been on that problem set got called together and said, here's the stuff we yanked out of the compound. Do what you did at Guantanamo. Go through it, see what we can use, see what's targetable.
Right. So how does it feel as someone who, gone through that whole kind of life experience, and your main mission is to catch bin Laden, and the day you find out that we got him, what was that like?
That was one of the more surreal and fulfilling moments of my life, because when that happened, I got a call basically right before the president went on the air, and they said, "Hey, we got him." It's evening, and I threw on a suit and tie, and I go to the office, and it's I mean, people don't know this really maybe, but a lot of intelligence agencies are for the most part closed after 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. So there's people working.
Cocktail hour.
There's people working, but there's not a lot of them. Right. And so when I got there, it was pretty dark, and I'm walking up to the door, and the big seal and the whole thing, and it was very surreal, and it's like I'm by myself in this echoey hallway, and I'm swiping my badge and going to work, and it was me and somebody that worked at the watch desk that actually got to write one of the very first reports that President Obama read about what Al-Qaeda would look like now that bin Laden was gone. And so morning comes, and the rest of the crew shows up, and people are walking in, and by that time I've been at work overnight, and been 12 hours since the raid happened or so, and I'm pushing products out, and we're getting ready to, kick off whatever comes next. And we're yawning and coffee as fast as we could drink it, and they picked a bunch of us to go to a warehouse in Maryland and start sorting through all the bags of stuff that the SEALs brought back. And so it was very fast moving, but it was, that moment of standing in the middle of my street on 9/11, wondering when I was going to get orders, to the day that concluded. And I called several of my friends and said, I don't know how I get on the team that sees this through, but that's where I need to be. And feeling like America delivered, feeling like, that was the mission, as long as it took, as big a slog as it was, as hard as it was, as many naysayers and obstacles or whatever, we did it. We got there. Right. It felt really good. It felt really good. It was that, the stuff that my kids are going to read about in their history books, I was back there somewhere, and I wasn't a big part of it. It's not like I was on the team or anything like that flew in, but it felt good, and I think that contrast is probably why what's going on now hurts so bad. Yeah. Well,
let's talk about that a little. I imagine when you were in Afghanistan, you made some relationships with some folks down there, and who would that be? Would that be kind of the Afghan interpreters or the military that was working with us? Were they folks you got to know and spend time with? Yeah, we had a lot of partners. I mean, and it's a complex ecosystem. I think a lot of folks watching this stuff on the news, they don't really understand that, we were deployed, right? We're Americans. Our families are back here. They're safe. They're at home. They're covered, and we're out there doing what we do. The people that were helping us were everything from vendors on the base that brought in supplies. They were guys that sold scarves. They were interpreters. They were cultural teams that would go out and actually, wade into battle with the guys that were out forward and help communicate with the women and children in a local language and actually, pretty intense stuff, right?
But they're not all the way across the world. It's their front yard. You know, if the Taliban was going to go after somebody, it wasn't, I mean, they were coming after us, but their families are in a house down the street. It's not like their families are back in Colorado.
Right.
You know, and so it was, think about it, man. All of the other parts of the coalition, right? The Germans, the French, everybody had support. Everybody had embassies. Everybody had or consulates, and they had workers there that were usually third country nationals, local staff. All those guys are still there. All the
Right.
interpreters that volunteered to help us. There were a lot of American citizens who were Afghan born who still had family over there, and so they volunteered immediately to go back and help.
So obviously, you know, we, like all of us, you saw the people falling from airplanes, you saw handing children over barbed wire, you saw the suicide bomber. We're literally a stone's throw from Camp Pendleton here, right, where we lost 11 in the suicide bomber attack, as well as, scores of Afghans slaughtered by that. You saw the drone strike that killed the innocent family. How did you feel when that last soldier got on that plane and flew away, leaving all the folks you talked about to the Taliban?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know this, a lot of people don't know this, but we were involved with the withdrawal way before that last soldier got on a plane. I mean, when the suicide bomb went off, me and several of our friends were, you know, working back channels and communications, trying to get people in a gate and trying to get people away from where there might be an explosion. And,
Yeah.
you know, so we had seen this debacle coming for weeks and had been pretty actively involved. You know, it's a big community, right? So we all called somebody we knew, and we all got a hold of somebody behind the wall and somebody on the outside of the wall, and tried to communicate and coordinate movement of people through. We had a lot of people that are what I would call vetted. They were people that we worked with directly. They were people that we knew. We had paperwork on them. You know, they worked at an embassy someplace, and so they'd been checked out. Those first few flights were not those people. They were anybody that could make the plane.
Right.
So, you know, the government, for better or worse, made the mistake of flying a whole bunch of people in without any kind of vetting at all. And they're sitting here in America, you know, still haven't been processed. But a lot of them had no reason to be here. A lot of them are, you know, there's a lot of bad guys in that mix.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of folks that were left behind that, you know, they had their paperwork in order. They were ready to go. There's still Americans over there. And so when you ask how do I feel about it, I think the easy answer, the obvious answer is I'm incredibly let down. I'm incredibly frustrated. There's a deep sense of betrayal, not just for me and that I feel, but I think sort of the shared sentiment that I get from a lot of the veterans that are doing this work and the volunteering is that we all feel kind of betrayed in the sense of who we are as a people, as a sense of who we are as a country and what our word is good for, what our national character is. It's hard to believe, you know. I mean, here we are. I'm sitting in my home office, you know, sitting here in San Diego, 16 hours a day doing my day job, and then when it's daytime in Afghanistan, the messages start to flood in, and we get, you know, desperate messages from people who are begging our forgiveness for bothering us.
Huh.
Right? And the irony of that and the kind of pain that you swallow, that you're apologizing to me, man, my country just left you there.
Yeah.
And you're apologizing for taking up my time?
Yeah.
I got you, man.
Yeah.
And so we're all working very hard to try and do the things that we feel, in a lot of cases, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I feel that our State Department ought to be doing, that
Right.
our government ought to be doing, and frankly could do pretty easily. You know, there's no end of supply in terms of smart, capable workers that could go help fix this problem.
Let's go back a little bit. So even before our last soldiers left, you were working to get people out. You were
Yeah.
on the phone. So who would you call? Is it people that you knew down in theater down there? Who would you be talking to? And give me a story about, you know, trying to get someone on those planes?
The first thing you start with is who do I know that's still over there?
Right.
Right? And you just ring them up. You hit them on Signal, you hit them on WhatsApp.
Is this one of our soldiers, military down there?
Soldiers, intel people, contractors, anybody. Really
Okay.
anybody. And I mean, it started very organically like that. It was a
Okay.
bunch of people like me who are not in that theater anymore, who don't do that job anymore, but who are still connected to it and want to help.
Right.
And so they just fired to anybody they could find. You know, anybody that was over there, anybody that had contacts, let's just start calling around. And so you had this groundswell of thousands and thousands of veterans going, no, man, that's not right. Let's do something about that.
And who are you trying to get out?
At first, all the people that we knew, the people that we had worked with, you know, if
Afghans?
Afghan interpreters, American citizens, obviously very, very high on the priority list.
Yeah.
You asked for a story. I had an Afghan interpreter, and I won't use names on this because, you know, there's some sensitivity about it, but two guys, both brothers, you know, from Afghanistan. They moved over here when they were kids, got citizenship, been living in middle America as productive American citizens. But they've still got 20 or so family members back in Afghanistan. When things break out, they decided to be volunteers. They decided to be interpreters. They volunteered to go back into the mix and help build a better country. When things started to fall apart, they're American citizens. They got blue passports. They can go home anytime they want, but they got 20 odd family members sitting there with no ticket out, and they don't want to leave their families behind.
Are their families at risk because the Taliban or folks there know what they did and their role with the Americans? So it's not just them that's at risk. Their whole family.
Of course, yeah, no, and that's what I meant earlier when I talked about, you know, we deploy, we go someplace far away from home where nobody can touch our families. Those guys were fighting in their front yard.
Right.
So, I mean, the Taliban wants to punish them. They go after their families. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of pictures of not just former allies or police or mayor killed. They kill their whole family.
Every day. And I mean, literally every day we get pictures and stories from the people that we're still trying to help.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll come back to that. But suffice it to say, these two, one of the brothers was back home in the U.S., and so the one brother that was in Afghanistan is trying to evacuate the family members of both sides. Well, we got told by the State Department that only immediate family members could come out. And so this poor guy is sitting there after 3 or 4 attempts to get through a gate, and he's told by the officials that you got to pick which 4 you want to bring.
Wow.
So, which is to say, you got to pick which 15 you're not going to bring.
And which 15
are going to stay behind.
And very possibly not survive, be
Correct.
killed. Yeah.
And so he picked his daughters and his wife, which obviously, what do you do?
Yeah.
We got them out with some significant trials and tribulations, and our mutual friend Mike in Florida can tell you a little bit about that.
Mike Waltz.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike Waltz. Yeah.
About 2 weeks after that evacuation, they found a safe house that those remaining 15 were hiding in. They killed one of the uncles in the street right there in front of the rest of the family, kidnapped 4, and those folks haven't been heard from since. How can I feel about that?
Yeah.
You know, we were talking to the State Department. We were talking to folks in Congress about it. We were talking to everybody. I mean, it was on news channels, you know, at that point. And all you got to do is open the gate, man. All you got to do is let them in. All you got to do is bring them back. This is blue passport holding Americans and their families. And, you know, that's how that story ends. And it's not just those guys, man. We're tracking right now 32,000 people. I want to say a little over 2,000 of those people are what we call manifested, which is to say they've been qualified to put on a flight manifest to come out. But that's a problem too, because there's only currently there's only one good place that they can go, because that's the only place that the State Department is processing visas.
Right.
And so all of these lily pads that people are trying to help build.
Tell everyone what a lily pad is.
A lily pad is an intermediate landing area where you know, if you're an evacuee and you're coming out, you have to apply for an American visa from a third country. You can't do it from here.
Right.
So you've got to go to someplace else. And that has been everywhere from Albania to, you know, Doha to
Portugal.
But anywhere,
Yeah, yeah.
anywhere. Basically
Yeah.
anywhere that says
Yeah.
we'll take them, you can come here, you can take a knee, you can process your people. That's a lily pad. Unfortunately, State Department doesn't have people in all of those places to handle that volume of Afghan refugees. So they're not. They're telling those countries, please don't take them. We're not gonna fly them out. We're not gonna take ownership. It's on you if you bring them, and that's that. And so people that want to fly charter planes, and you've seen this firsthand, people that want to, it doesn't matter how much money you've got to throw at a charter plane. If you don't have people on the back end to process those folks and get them moved on, you're wasting your money because they're not going to let the planes fly. Or when they do get there, they're stuck. And so there's all of this bureaucratic nonsense and red tape and opposition, you know, and it's I've had this story a bunch of times from different people.
I hear it from everybody I talk to.
Yeah, it feels like when you finally do find the way through the little maze and you get to a tactic that works, a week later they've come up with some new rule to shut that down.
The State Department.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who the guy making that decision is, but it sure feels like it.
Well, you talk to people in the State Department. I know people in organizations, and of course they take their orders from the top. But the people in state, when you express your frustrations, are they sympathetic? Are they saying, "I understand. I'm just"?
I mean, it's like anything else. I can't talk about state like a monolithic thing.
Right.
There's people there that really want to help. There's people there that are target locked. I mean, they see the problem for what it is and they want to do something about it. But your hands are kind of tied. You know, you can only do what policy allows you to do.
Right.
And so, you know, part of it is it's I hate to say it, it's a lot like talking to a drug addict. The first thing you got to do is admit you have a problem.
Right.
You know, and I think that official U.S. policy right now is we're done in Afghanistan. You know, so I don't know that there's an official awareness that there's 32,000 and change people still over there. I don't know that there's an awareness that there's 250 odd bad guys that we've had to put in jail in the U.S. that were brought in without screening at the front end. I don't know that there's an awareness that you need people like us over there and in these places that you're bringing these folks into to help you screen. I mean, I could give State Department, me personally, and if I can do it, I guarantee there's 50 other companies out there that can do it. I could give them 10 people on every single U.S. airbase that they've brought a refugee to today to go help them screen and process visas. So the knowledge base is there, the information is there. What's missing is permission to help, and that kills me. That absolutely kills me, that there is I mean, World War II, right? The industrial American machine comes together to supply the warfighter, right? We're changing car factories into tank factories. Everybody gave, right? Everybody's saving bacon grease to help make bombs. Right now, you've got a very deep bench of people with the capability, the know-how, the experience in theater, the rank, the connections. We could help. We're being told we're not allowed. That destroys your soul, man.
There's this thing called honor, right?
Used to be, yeah.
Used to be.
I can't make it make sense. I can't, there's a meme that goes around that says, I'm not saying that they're doing it on purpose, but if they were, how would it look any different?
And they're not giving us an explanation why.
Well, and I think that's what's missing in this context that could really be useful is let's have a conversation. Like, let's talk about what the real goal is and how you want to get there and what your reasons are. In the past, when you heard officials talk about the Great Depression or World War I or World War II or the loss of, families in Vietnam, losing their sons and daughters, it was a much more honest conversation, even if it was a really uncomfortable conversation. And a lot of times the media had to hold their feet to the fire to make that happen.
Yeah.
Right? Artists had to do that. There are protest songs out on the National Mall trying to bring attention to this stuff. Giant rallies of people saying, hey, this is wrong, let's talk about it. One of the things that's missing these days is that media is not the disinterested third party that it used to be. It's not pointing that camera lens at the problem and saying, how come? It's a bunch of softball questions that are based on kind of what your political line is rather than what the facts are or what the agenda is or whatever. And I don't know what the solution to that is, but I can tell you, I don't think there's any reasonable person that I've talked to in the last 3 months that would say, oh no, we're being dealt with really honestly right now.
We've talked before, to me, this is a moral issue, not a political one. But
100%.
Of course, the president is the president and the Secretary of Defense is the Secretary of Defense. And, you said earlier that you felt betrayed. Who do you feel betrayed by? Is it the president? Is it General Milley, General Austin, our country, the media, everybody?
One of the more poignant discussions you and I have had on this topic is the sense of who we are as Americans.
Yeah.
The us of Normandy.
Yeah.
The us of, the Industrial Revolution are coming together around a tragedy. The us of 9/11.
Yes.
It's not like it's ancient history.
Yes.
And I feel like that us has been betrayed. I feel like that national character the people that we want to be, the people that we individuals feel we are, has been betrayed by the official posture of what we're doing, if that makes any sense. You know, and I mean, yeah, that falls to the leadership. If President Trump were in office doing this same stuff, it'd be his fault. If President Obama were in office, George W. Bush were in office, whoever's sitting there at the time, it would be his fault or her fault. You know, and I'll feel exactly this way if the next president carries on this way. I mean, and I don't care what party they are. What bothers me about it is I look at these Afghans who are writing to me every day, you know, and I see I mean, John, they're sending you pictures of their kids.
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
They're sending you secret videos shot through the corner of a window of their father being executed in the street by the Taliban, and they're begging for help. They're begging. Look, we supported you. You can call my old boss. He works for this American company on a contract with this government agency. I'm legit. I swear, I just need help. And you can't do anything, you know? And it's eviscerating. There's such a dissonance between the me that put on a uniform and said, I will support and defend my Constitution, and the shit that we're seeing right now. It's not right.
It's not you.
It's not us. It's not us, the American people, us. It's not the nation that we were built to be. It's not the nation that we have been in very recent memory. It's not the us that inspired me to go over there and have this fight in the first place.
Do you think Millie and Austin should have resigned?
I think they should have made it right. You know, I think they should have made it right. I think they should have done what they expected us to do. When I was a soldier, if I had messed something up, if I got it wrong, I had to repeat that station until I got it right. I was a no-go at that station. I had to go back and do it again. I had to get it right.
So there was accountability.
Yeah, you have to clean up your messes.
Right.
You know, you can't just leave this wake of destruction in your path and say, hey, just a soldier following orders. I mean, that doesn't fly.
Well, that's interesting. That's Millie's argument.
That hasn't flown since Nuremberg.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
sometimes resigning can be a statement in itself that changes policy.
It can. I mean, if it's done with some accountability, if you're willing to say I'm resigning because I can't support this action,
right?
Then that matters. That's a meaningful statement. I'd rather see these capable men in leadership positions step up and do what's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather see them grab it by the throat and do what's right.
Just this weekend, I was at the Reagan Summit, and General Austin was asked if he had any regrets. And he mentioned a few. He mentioned the 13 soldiers, of course. He mentioned the folks killed in the drone strike. But then he started talking about our great airlift again and how great that was. And I saw a lot of veterans in that audience just put their heads down. What does that make you feel when they talk about regrets, they turn to this political narrative instead of talking about everything you've talked about here in the last hour, our allies being murdered, women and children, women facing the greatest women's rights catastrophe in generations, you know, children being sold by their parents for food. I would think there might be some regrets for those things too.
There are, from me and others like me. I mean, we look at that and you know, I mean, I'm not ashamed to tell you, there's days I can't take it. I close the door and cry in the quiet of my own office and, you know, try not to let it spill out into daily life. But, you know, I don't know. You mentioned that, you know, the greatest airlift of our age. I know a lot of people that paid for a lot of those planes, and I know a lot of people that were, you know, bowing their heads and saying, you know what, take credit if you need to take credit, whatever. Let's just keep getting it done. Yeah. You know, I don't think anybody on my side of it cares who takes the credit. You know, I'd be happy to shower them with all the credit if they'd get it done.
Get our people out.
Get our people out.
Yeah.
Get the people who stood beside us for 20 years and risked their entire family, their entire livelihood, their entire, you know, home, self, life, to stand beside us and our ideals and fight with us. You know, I mean, how do you leave them behind?
Well, let's talk about kind of you specifically, because, you know, there's a lot of these orgs, Argo, Pineapple, Project Exodus Relief, that are kind of larger groups doing this. You're kind of with a couple buddies kind of doing this. You're working with everybody.
Yeah.
You're kind of doing it. Can you talk about the couple buddies you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I foisted this on a group. Black Box Group is a great company out of Texas, founded by an Australian dude named Brad Tonkin. He was an Australian special operations guy.
He's right there.
He's right behind the camera. I'm trying not to look over there because he'll make some comment and make me laugh. But Brad set up a company that was very special, and it was designed around the idea that if you find really talented people with drive and ambition and then just enable them to do whatever it is that they want to do in the world, you can't help but have a successful company at some point. He made the mistake of telling me that, and then this all happened, and so I started working on Afghan evacuation support, like a volunteer, like everybody else, and I, in my duties as his deputy, tried very hard to keep him away from it, but he's just like me, he's just like you, he couldn't stay away from it either, so before you know it, the whole team is involved, and this is what we do now. I did an interview very early on, and somebody had asked, how did you put this team together? And I said, I had nothing to do with putting this team together. What happened was we were all concerned about it. We all started doing stuff, and when anything good happened, you look left and right and see who's there. And a lot of times it's the same 4 or 5 guys, so you decide that's who you're going to work with. And anytime something needs to get done, these are the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 guys that actually get stuff done, so you call them back. And that kind of became the team. And originally we tried to align with some of the bigger efforts. We plugged into a group called ComTF that was getting things done early on. I talked to guys at Pineapple. We talked to a lot of people in a lot of organizations. But being volunteers, a lot of people have to get back to work at some point.
Sure.
You got to keep the lights on. And so we kind of made a conscious decision not to set up our own 501c3. We kind of made the decision, look, we're not going to build an organization around this and be one of the 110 people out there that are already doing it. Let's just enable. Let's just go, special operations imperatives. Let's go be a force multiplier. Let's figure out who's getting results and figure out how we can add to their effort. I've been a congressional liaison for 3 or 4 organizations that are doing this, just reaching out and talking to whoever is showing leadership at the time. Senator Tom Cotton's office was an early supporter, and they went way above and beyond while HCIA was still open. Congressman Mike Garcia here in California was an immense supporter, and I don't even want to get into all of the things that they were able to do to help out, but they did a fantastic job. Mike Waltz and his staff were phenomenal, and there's a bunch I'm leaving out. Tom Massey,
Democrats and Republicans.
Absolutely, it was truly bipartisan.
Yeah.
It was former folks too. We Governor Bill Richardson, chimed in on our behalf on this stuff.
And so let's talk about how this has affected you personally. I mean, you have a job, you have clients. How are you mentally holding up?
Good days and bad days. It's tough some days. It's not easy to wake up to videos of people watching their family get murdered in the street. It's not easy to see that over and over and then, walk out of the room and interact with the world like nothing's wrong. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to compartmentalize, and so there's definitely days that I spend a lot of hours on the phone with some of our mutual friends. I'll call Brad. We'll instead of flying someplace, we'll take a road trip, so we got a little time to talk through some stuff and kind of work it out. But yeah, no, it's difficult. It's a lonely thing. Even though you've got a lot of other veterans out there doing what we're doing, it can feel, you get pretty beat up.
Well, I hope you take care of yourself first.
I don't usually look like this.
Well, I usually look like this. I'm sorry. So for people watching, so much of on the outsider, what can we do? We feel helpless. What can we do? Is it donate money? Is it spread the word? Is it what can we do to help those of us who want to support the promise keepers that are keeping America's promise?
Yeah, donating money is always a big deal. You got to be careful and make sure it's going to the right things. I think that one of the most important things that people can do right now that I'm not seeing nearly enough of is picking up the phone, man. Get on the phone with your local news outlets. Get on the phone with call CNN's home office, call the press corps, call your Congress people, call your senators, and don't sit around wishing that it was part of the conversation. Start the conversation. I think a lot of people underestimate their own power in that regard. You put out a song recently that has hit people, probably harder than any statement I or anybody else could make, just because it resonates so much with that character question that you're talking about, And I think if people want to really help, donate, be a part of it, volunteer. We've got people that are cranking data entry so that this form looks like the State Department wants it or whatever. But man, get out there and talk. Get out there and make it part of the conversation, and don't let them off the hook with, hey, it was a great airlift.
Well, I know I speak for a lot of folks who are really ashamed and depressed about what's going on, but the shining light of this time are folks like you and Brad and everybody else who's keeping the promise and really reminding us as Americans who we are. So thank you for sharing this because, brother, you are a walking hero.
Man,
thank you for everything.
I don't know how to take that, but I appreciate it. And I mean, it's very mutual, Thank you for starting the conversation.
All right, buddy. So, Mike, little update. We recorded our interview over a month ago, and I know a lot has happened. Back in the day in San Diego, no flights were going out. You were very frustrated. I have seen some flights are starting to move. I know you're in DC right now talking to folks. So here we are, February 2nd. Tell me the state of the game.
Well, thanks for the update. Absolutely. We came out here. Brad and I are here. He's right over there.
Hey, Brad.
And we're meeting with everybody that'll take a meeting, from people up on the Hill to donors to private parties to non-government organizations and even some concerned citizens who just want to get in the game and help out. We started flying again. We've been working around some of the limitations that we talked about last time. We've got some foreign partners that have helped out a little bit, and so we were able to get some planes moving again. In fact, we've got two leaving. I don't want to be too specific about when, but within the next couple of days, we've got a couple of flights that should be taken off with a little over 330 people aboard. So
that's incredible. And who are these American citizens? Are they allies, interpreters, people at risk?
The bulk are interpreters. Yeah, a little bit of all of the above. We've got predominantly these are folks who worked with us as U.S. Special Operations Forces. We do have some folks that were, for instance, embassy employees and some people that supported on different contracts. But all these folks are essentially the people that would have been left behind altogether. They didn't have civ applications in, but they were all allies. So if you'll recall, the last time we talked, State Department basically had issued a statement saying that civ applicants with chief of mission status or approval or above were going to be helped over the course of the next 12 months, and everybody else was sort of in line at some indeterminate period, and we just haven't been able to accept that. So we moved a little further down the list, and we're getting those folks out now.
Incredible. And if folks want to donate directly to your organization or your operations, what's the best place for them to do that?
Well, as I mentioned last time, I try to work across a lot of different organizations, and Plan B ARC, which we're working closely with a lady by the name of Jean Marie Thrower. And we're also working with Perry Blackburn's organization, the Special Forces guy that everybody talks about him being the horse soldier, the guy that rode horses in to ride with the Northern Alliance and fight Al Qaeda at the early stages. So those are the two predominantly that we're helping out. That's Afghan Free and Plan B ARC.
Are we allowed to say where the flights are going, or is that
I'd rather not, just for the time being, because I don't want anybody trying to shut them down again. That's been a real problem. But once they're off the ground and out of there, I'll definitely send you an update.
And just so folks know, a ballpark of how much it costs to get one person out. Is it $5 grand, 10 grand, 15 grand?
Well, usually it doesn't. I mean, you don't charge by the person. Obviously, it's not like buying tickets.
Right.
You have to charter a plane.
Right.
And you have to do that with a major air carrier. So it's several $100,000s to get the plane, and then you've got to buy the fuel for the plane and the flight hours and the crew, and then you've got a pretty significant degree of communication and coordination to get landing permissions and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, all told, it's about $500,000 every time a plane takes off.
Right, and you got 300 people, so you're looking 8-10 grand, with other costs and
all wrapped. Yeah, probably the lowest we've managed to get it's been about 5,000 a person if you were doing it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically between 5 and 10K a head if you've got a full flight.
Well, so for folks watching, every dollar matters. You save a life. Mike, again, I can't, I'm just in awe of what you guys do every day. You have a nice day there in DC.
You're by the Spy Museum, so we'll leave it at that. But
It's right down the street. Yeah.
but thanks for the update. We'll check in later. And again, thanks for being a hero, buddy.
Hey, thank you. Talk to you very soon.